Good morning, Happy New Year, and again, thank you for spending some time with us to join our monthly Mornings with O'Keefe program webinar. My name is Molly. I am the Adult Programs Manager at the O'Keefe Museum, and this is something that I look forward to every month and very excited to kick off 2026 with this program today. I would like to begin by recognizing the lands of the Pueblo people on which the sites of the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum stand. We recognize and honor their elders, past and present, and celebrate the vitality of their people today and into future generations. I offer this with humility and gratitude, in acknowledgement of the need to confront the ongoing injustices of settler colonialism. I'd also like to extend a thank you to the members and donors who are joining us today because it's from the support that you give us that we're able to have free programs like this. If you're not yet a member and you're interested in learning about what benefits you can have as a member of the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum, please consider joining and visit gokm.org/membership to learn more. Throughout this talk, please place your questions in the Q&A box, which can be found at the bottom or top of your screen, depending on your device. We will try to answer as many as we can at the end of the conversation. For the duration of the lecture, the chat has been disabled. But please note that following today's talk, a recording will be made available on the O'Keeffe Museum's website in about a week or two once we've had a chance to add captions in English and Spanish. Without any further delay, it is now my pleasure to introduce today's speakers. Today with us, we have Bess Murphy and Jason Garcia, who co-curated the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum's newest exhibition, Tewa Nangeh, Tewa Country. And we are going to learn all about the process of how that exhibition came to be today. And for those of you who are not local to Santa Fe, you're going to get a wonderful behind-the-scenes look at the creation of this exhibition and the themes it explores. So thank you both so much for being here today, and we are looking forward to learning from you both.
Thanks, Molly. Good morning, everybody. I'm just gonna start our PowerPoint here.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here.
Here, maybe I'll go to this first slide, but maybe we can introduce ourselves a little bit and give some folks some background on our work and our practices, and then move into the exhibition.
Sounds great.
You start.
Oh, okay, I was gonna say ladies first.
Non-O'Keeffe employees first.
Good morning, Sangitamu. My name is Jason Garcia. I am from the Pueblo of Santa Clara, Kha'p'o Owingeh. I am an artist, printmaker, ceramicist, co-curator of the Tewa Nangeh, Tewa Country exhibition at the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum here in beautiful downtown Ohkay Owingeh, also known as Santa Fe, New Mexico.
And yeah, I'm Bess Murphy. I am the curator of art and social practice here at the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum. I was born and raised in Santa Fe and have worked on many other collaborative and artist-led projects over the years before coming to the O'Keeffe, and I'm happy to be able to expand that work here in my position. I think maybe I'll start us off by saying that this is not the first project that Jason and I have worked on together. So in coming into my role at the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum, it was really important for me to think about how organizations and how curators do work that builds meaningful and lasting relationships, especially with local artists and local communities. And so part of my vision for my role was trying to figure out folks that maybe I knew from the past or had worked with or had a relationship with, and see if there was alignment with their work and my work at the O'Keeffe Museum and sort of the O'Keeffe's larger vision for projects and community-based exhibitions and programming. And so that was sort of like my overall vision when I came into my position, I think. And then I'll let Jason sort of talk about like the origin of sort of the idea, the concept behind Tewa Nangeh.
Yeah, like Bess was saying, or as you were saying, rather, we first had met probably around 2016, I think. You were at the Center for the Arts here in Santa Fe, and I know I was doing a residency at Institute of American Indian Arts, and I think that's where our paths first crossed. And then a year or two later, we worked on an exhibition imprint, and that was a group of six artists within Santa Fe community, indigenous artists, and um, and then in 2020, I had participated in a online panel presentation that was called "This Is Not O'Keeffe Country," and this was by the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum, and was moderated by Dr. Alicia Guzman, along with myself and Dr. Corrine Sanchez of Tewa Women United, and Dr. Christina Castro of Three Sisters Collective. And we had talked about O'Keeffe's presence on the New Mexican landscape, and this was in response to a New Mexico True ad that had run with an O'Keeffe quote saying, it was one of her quotes where she was talking about when I first came to New Mexico, there was something different about the air, and she claimed it as hers, and she says, "This is mine." Um, and so that we talked about different aspects of O'Keeffe and the mythology and the term of O'Keeffe country. And during the talk, there were some things of where we had talked about what are future steps for the museum to address some of these concerns that we had in our talk. And one of them was talking about maybe an exhibition of having Tewa artists and the assertion and reaffirmation of Santa Fe and the term O'Keeffe country of it actually being Tewa Nangeh, Tewa country. And this is the ancestral homelands of the Tewa people, which is comprised of six Tewa Pueblos, and they're all based on language. And we all share a language, which is the Tewa language. And the six Tewa Pueblos are Ohkay Owingeh, San Juan Pueblo, Santa Clara, Kha'p'o Owingeh, um, San Ildefonso, Ohkay Owingeh, Nambé Owingeh, Pojoaque Owingeh, Pojoaque Pueblo, and Tesuque Owingeh, Tesuque Pueblo. And there was a grant that I was looking at, and it had a native artist with the native artist partners with a institution to create a project exhibition. And, I thought this was like the perfect step to creating this exhibition. Applied for the exhibition, didn't get it, but then the ball had already started rolling as far as the planning and choosing of artists, selections, kind of talking about what our goal was for the exhibition, ideas, planning stages, all of that. And during that time, we also applied for additional grants as well too. And we were fortunate to receive a couple, and also just they're on the screen: the Andy Warhol Foundation, the National Endowment for the Arts, Terra Foundation, and New Mexico Humanities Council. So shout out to those organizations that helped fund the exhibition as well too. And that's pretty much where the seed and the germination of Tewa Nangeh started from those things.
Yeah, I think this project has been sort of an ongoing experiment, I guess, in a way for all of us. This is the first exhibition that the O'Keeffe Museum has done that is like this, with 12 living artists collaborating together, really centering a very different narrative. And I think this is Jason's first curatorial project also. And I think I will say that this project would not exist were it not for your guidance, Jason. Absolutely. I think I'm just going to switch our slides so that everyone can see all of the artists and collaborators on our screen. And really, Jason was central to gathering this group and also just creating an environment of trust. I knew some of these folks before. I didn't know everybody. Some people I had worked with, others this is my first time working with them. And really, they had not worked with the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum before. And, it took sort of a leap of faith, I think, from all of them and from you to trust us to build a meaningful collaboration for this project.
And trust myself as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
You went both ways.
Yep, exactly.
Mhm.
Maybe we can just sort of we'll show more images of these folks as we move through and some of their artworks and projects, but maybe just while we have everybody on the screen and we don't have their names right here in my fancy collage, I'm realizing. But we can introduce everybody who was a participant in this exhibition.
Mhm.
Do you want to?
Yeah, we can
Okay.
start on the top, I'm not too sure, left corner,
Yeah.
as I'm reading it,
Works, yep.
Arlo Naminga from Ohkay Owingeh, sculptor, and Samuel Katnack from Pojoaque Pueblo. And he's the Tewa language preservationist, the director there at Pojoaque. Dr. Woody Aguilar, archaeologist from San Ildefonso Pueblo. Michael Naminga, painter from Ohkay Owingeh, or painter, photographer, artist. And John Garcia, my dad from Santa Clara Pueblo. He's also an artist and craftsperson, language preservation as well. Dr. Lieutenant Governor Matthew Martinez from Ohkay Owingeh, scholar, tribal leader. Myself, Martha Romero from Nambé Pueblo, a potter, and also artist. And Eliza Naranjo Morris from Santa Clara Pueblo, artist, painter, mixed media, also the Tewa art teacher at the Kha'p'o Community School. Mr. Randolph Silva from Santa Clara Pueblo, painter and also educator. Shireen Pilar Gonzalez from San Ildefonso Pueblo, filmmaker. And Marita Suazo Hines from Tesuque Pueblo. She is a potter and also the educator at the Museum of Indian Arts and Culture.
Yeah. So we were really lucky to gather this incredible group together, not just to share their artworks, but to spend 2 years really in conversation, discussing how and why we were going to build an exhibition centering Tewa Nangeh at the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum. A little bit different to do at a single artist museum. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it was interesting just to get to ask the individuals, artists, collaborators, their thoughts on participating. They were also asking like, why me? Why did you choose me? And thinking of how their arts, their ideas, thoughts play within land, using the land as the medium. Maybe not even necessarily having a thought regarding Georgia O'Keeffe. And, I think that was part of it initially, where some did have that question of why me and why O'Keeffe and how does my work fit into like the greater idea of and themes of the exhibition. And part of those themes of the exhibition had been the quote of Georgia O'Keeffe talking about seeping, which is Cerro Perdonal. It's located just north of Abiquiu, or west of Abiquiu rather. The mountain Cerro Perdonal. Georgia O'Keeffe in 1977 had stated in a Newsday article saying, "It's my private mountain. It belongs to me. God told me if I painted it enough, I could have it." So just talking about the claim of ownership, either personal, artistic, maybe even in the sense of possession in terms of the name of Kha'p'o, the mountain, which translates to like Flaking Stone Mountain, which refers to the quartzite obsidian that's found nearby that's used for arrowheads and tools. And then it having the Spanish name Cerro Pedernal, Pedernal Mountain, Pedernal Peak, but then also having legislation in the 1980s after O'Keeffe passed to change it to O'Keeffe Mountain. And her ashes are also spread there. So, there's so many different layers of that theme that we kind of started with and then just kind of went from there of looking at the collections, looking at visits to the O'Keeffe House in Abiquiu, Abishu, which is the Valley of Chokecherries in the Tewa language, and then also the house and studio at Ghost Ranch as well too.
Mhm.
So a lot of research went into the themes, work, collection, personal items of Georgia O'Keeffe's as well.
Absolutely. Um, yeah, I think that really the intention from the beginning, but this became even clearer as we worked over these 2 years and we had conversations and we shared meals and went
Studio
on
visits.
studio visits and field trips and potlucks and all sorts of things like that, was that the goal for this project was really to tell a story of relationship and identity and place, right? And so I think I'm gonna switch slides now to our next image, which is a map of Tewa Nangeh, Tewa Country, that we all created collaboratively over many meetings and many different iterations. And I think this is a great entrance for folks into this space and into the concept of the exhibition. And I think the goal really was to have people walk into the galleries of Tewa Nangeh and feel like they'd come into a different place and feel even more deeply rooted in an understanding of like the multi-layered histories of northern New Mexico.
Mhm.
And I'm so sorry to interrupt. But would you, we're not seeing the map slide. So I think, would you mind going into the presentation mode on PowerPoint and that might
Yeah, let me
make
see.
it full screen and then we could see.
Is that not working still? Let me try it again. I am in the presentation, but let's see if this will work. Molly, are you seeing it now?
We see sort your overall PowerPoint program, but I think if you go to
Oh,
the view
weird.
at the top.
Okay, let's see. Slideshow?
Presenter view.
I don't know. If I do presenter view, will you? Yeah, let me try the slideshow. How's that, Molly?
It looks the same.
Okay, what if we do presenter view? I don't know why this is. Let me stop my share for a second. Sorry, everybody, for the technical adventure. We did actually test this out this morning, and it seemed like it was working.
It wouldn't be a live virtual presentation if there weren't a PowerPoint
Right?
hiccup.
Interview. Let's see if that works. Now I've lost our Zoom. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to try and share again. Application. Which one? The same thing. Okay. What about now? Are you just seeing the presenter view?
Yes, now we're seeing the presenter view.
Okay, let's do
Oh,
slideshow.
wait, that looks
Okay.
better.
Continue to share.
That's
How's that?
it. That's it. We're there.
So
Okay.
we have the map on screen.
Yep. How's that?
Fantastic. That looks amazing. Thank you both so much. And sorry to interrupt, but yes, we were speaking
I'm glad
about
that you
as the
interrupted.
entrance.
Otherwise, Yeah, that would have been a very confusing hour of conversation.
Thank you both.
Thanks, Molly.
Yeah, so the collaborators had created this map based on ancestral stories, ancestral teachings of the Tewa landscape, and Tewa Nangeh is described as the boundary markers are situated by four sacred mountains, which is Tseshung Pín, San Antonio Mountain, Tsikumu Pín, Chicoma Mountain, that's in the Jemez Mountain Range, Okuu Pín, Turtle Mountain, which is the Sandia Mountains, located just east of Albuquerque on the east side of town, and then Pín, which is the Sangre de Cristo mountains, mountain range. And then we also put in the six Tewa Pueblos, and then also ancestral villages as well too, such as like Buje and Fioge and Junge Owingeh. Then we also included Ohkay Owingeh as well as a ancestral Tewa village as well. And this is then we also had there's color associations with each of the mountains, and this was part of the labeling that we had created. Labels that are on the north side or facing the north are colored blue. Labels that are facing west are colored yellow. Labels facing south are colored red, and the labels facing east are colored white. And then the heavens, the sky is multicolored, and then the earth is represented as black. So those colors come up throughout the exhibition, and also the exhibition is also what would you say, like the movement of the exhibition as the audience member goes through the exhibition is kind of related to that motion of the cardinal directions as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we were really lucky. I remember one of the first times that Jason came into the museum to look at the spaces for the exhibition and get a sense of where we would be working. You took out your phone and opened up your compass on your phone, like immediately. That was, I think, the first thing that you did when we came in, just to see what the space's alignment was in terms of the cardinal directions. And amazingly, we are actually pretty good.
Yeah, we were spot on. So.
Yeah, it's pretty well aligned due north-south, which is sort of lovely.
And that's sometimes one of those things that I've seen in different other exhibitions, or artists have used the directions, cardinal directions, but maybe they're thinking when they put when they put the exhibition together, maybe they don't have the compass actually right in front of them so that they can see like, oh yeah, north is that way. Because there have been some that I've seen and I was like, let me double check. So then I do check and then I notice that it's off. So,
Ouch.
I would like to say that,
We're not off.
We're not off. So that's good.
Excellent.
So
Yeah.
you can come in and bring your compass. So.
So, I mean, I think one of the things that we can take away from this map is definitely like how rich this landscape is, and how much meaning and history there is in these places. And when you think about Georgia O'Keeffe coming to New Mexico, she actually would have arrived out in the Galisteo Basin, really, in Laney, come up to around Santa Fe, and then gone up to Taos Pueblo, or Taos, the community of Taos, which is neighbors Taos Pueblo, not a Tewa Pueblo, but she spent a lot of time there. And then found her home in Abiquiu and at Ghost Ranch. And so really her life in New Mexico is in the center of Tewa Nangeh. So it's interesting to think about how she's only one moment in this landscape and one individual in this landscape.
Right, exactly, on the landscape that have been inhabited by Tewa people, Native people, Pueblo people since time immemorial. And we do have some of those references to some of those older villages like Mesa Verde and Chaco Canyon. And and then that also talks about migration, which we do have some of those migration themes in the exhibition with certain pieces of work as well too. And then also we do have mentioning Galisteo Basin. There are several Tewa Pueblos that are or villages that are located within the Galisteo Basin just south of Santa Fe, and that was part of a migration movement from there of those Tewa people post Pueblo Revolt in 1680 and 1700s. They moved up north, and then near Santa Cruz area to a place called San Juan, and then they moved from there out to First Mesa on Hopi Reservation, Hopi Mesas as well to be a mercenary force. So we talk about some of those themes in the exhibition as well too, migration.
So just to show like some of the moments that we had in the research and planning, thinking through this exhibition. This is the group at Georgia O'Keeffe's studio in Abiquiu. We were talking about not just, what the landscape looked like when she was alive. You can see that's Samuel Catanac's back holding up an image of the studio from when O'Keeffe was still alive and working in there, thinking about how she was looking out onto the landscape, thinking about how it changed, and even hearing from John, Jason's dad, about, some of his knowledge and experiences of different eras of that valley, of the Chama River Valley, and how much it has changed over the years, how there's now the waterways are completely different from when O'Keeffe would have arrived and been living there. There's a whole new-ish, not new, but the Abiquiu Lake, the reservoir, wasn't there when O'Keeffe first moved in. And so it's just all of these changes to the landscape is something I think that people were really interested in. Food.
Food was very much a part of it. Eating,
Yep.
sharing, knowledge, but then also sharing meals also was part of it. And then it was really great to travel to the different Tewa Pueblos to visit with artists and the scholars, just to be in their homes and to get a more personal sense of what we were working on, what we were thinking of, and just seeing like and being on the landscape, being on the Tewa landscape, of being in those pueblos or seeing what artists maybe their inspiration, like what visually they could see from their homes or what you see from their villages, and knowing like there are some amazing visits that we had made, and this is a 2-year process. So I feel like we spent a lot of time in each of others' homes and on the road and back and forth between Santa Fe, between Abiquiu and the Tewa Pueblos, and it was really amazing to see all of that, the Tewa landscape.
So then eventually we wound up with an exhibition. I think this slide really goes back to what Jason was talking about, and really, I think, especially for you, but many of the artists as well, this key source of inspiration, how Georgia O'Keeffe depicted Cerro Pedernal, Tsiping repeatedly, and did claim ownership of it. And like Jason mentioned, there was even an attempt at legislation to change the name. It did not succeed. Obviously, it's still Cerro Pedernal officially on the maps of New Mexico. But thinking about how complex it is for one individual to, even jokingly, if it was jokingly or seriously, to claim ownership or a God-given right to a mountain, to a sacred site, to a site that has ongoing cultural importance
to the people, to the landscape, to our ceremonies, our songs. There's still an ancestral village also named Tsiping that's located near the mountain seeping. And so, there's a lot of cultural significance to that area for not only just Tewa people, but other Pueblo people, native peoples as well, too. Hunting areas, gathering sites for uh, different mineral resources, cultural resources. And so it's not an ownership, it's more like a stewardship of Tewa people on the Tewa landscape regards to cultural, traditional cultural properties, as they call them, sometimes in the legal sense of naming certain sites and areas within Tewa Nangeh or within New Mexico or within any landscape. And this piece is a clay tile, hand processed clay tile. That's the clay has been gathered from different sites located near Santa Clara Pueblo. It's painted with different mineral pigments and then fired outdoors, and that sets the color. And it does have seep ink. This and then the welcome to Okuu Country with Tewa painted on top of the Okuu name. And this is a really interesting piece of creating it and then installing it into the exhibition. It greets the viewer, the audience member, as they enter the space of Tewa Nangeh of the exhibition, and kind of sets up that theme. And then the O'Keeffe painting Perdinal is behind that, so you can kind of see as you look, you can see the tile and then the painting of O'Keeffe's, and as the person enters the exhibition space. And then also I had created variations of seep ink through the research that we had done. O'Keeffe had painted seep ink 29 times. And so I have this installation. It's an ongoing installation piece of images, variations of seep ink. And currently I have 19 that were installed when the exhibition opened, and I'm currently working on more variations where I'll have 30 or more. So I have 11 that I need to install definitely within the exhibition time period of the next 8 or 9 months or so. So working on some, hoping to bring another one or two in the next week or so. So stay tuned, keep looking at that.
So we have just a series of slides of the amazing artists with their artworks, and I think we can talk a little bit both about the works that everyone created, but also a little bit about how they were installed and moving through the intentionality of that. I guess I didn't really organize these. Not chronologically, but
Oh, yeah.
geographically in terms of the exhibition. But that's okay because hopefully folks can come, and if you can't, this does, I think, give you a really strong sense of the works as they are seen in the galleries. So this is Randy Silva, in front of his series of mixed media on paper. They are his versions of vintage tourist postcards in a way. He was very interested in this idea of Georgia O'Keeffe traveling and bringing back souvenir postcards from her travels or sending them to people while she was traveling. And Randy had grown up seeing new vintage travel postcards of New Mexico and of the Pueblos, a lot of them having photographs of his family members at dances and telling people to come visit Indian country. And I think he was really interested in doing these very intimate and personal portraits of each Pueblo, but recalling that vintage style.
Right, exactly. Even somebody had mentioned, why do they have San Juan Pueblo on there? It's called Ohkay Owingeh, and it's like, well, that's referencing that vintage, the old name, the former name, as it was previously known by. And then also he did add Abiquiu as well too, as one of those Tewa Pueblos that has the dance. I think they're called like Nanae, the dance
Mhm.
of it's like slavery. So he does talk about the Henizado
Mhm.
history of Abishu of Abiquiu as well too.
Yeah. Let's see. This is Marita Suazo Hines with one of her pieces. It's a series of it's a micaceous clay tea set that she created. Um, and throughout the exhibition, some of the artists decided to do pieces that were maybe more in direct dialogue with O'Keeffe herself or her practice or her lifestyle. And some of the artists were doing pieces that were much more about like a personal expression of identity or place or connection to land, their own personal histories. And so this is one of Marita's pieces that's very much in dialogue with how O'Keeffe lived her life. You can see there's a small photograph of O'Keeffe's shelves with many, many, many teapots. So,
Mhm. And part of the work also was inspired by our visits to the O'Keeffe House in Abiquiu and
mhm.
Ghost Ranch. And I'd say most, if not all, this was their first experience visiting the houses also.
Yeah,
So
I think
I think
absolutely.
a
Yep.
part of it was what was their first impressions of how they saw her
Hmm.
lifestyle, of what she collected, what did she like,
Hmm.
what impressed them the most about O'Keeffe.
Hmm. And I think for Marita, not just like in a silly way that O'Keeffe had lots of teapots, which what is sort of surprising perhaps. I mean, there's a lot of teapots for one person to have in their home or even in their two homes. But that the idea for Marita of being able to envision a moment where she and O'Keeffe could sit together and share tea and talk about, the significance of sharing this beverage, this healing beverage in many ways, and opening up a space for conversation and curiosity. And um, part of that exploration also was the curiosity for Marita to build teapots. It's not a form that she had ever constructed before. And so I think she really enjoyed that process
Mhm.
as well. So they're all made out of micaceous clay. You can even see in the photographs a little bit of that sparkle. Really
Mhm.
beautiful.
And then Shireen Pilar Gonzalez, who is a great great granddaughter of, or maybe one or two. Yeah, I think it's two,
Mhm.
two greats, granddaughter of the potter Maria Martinez of San Ildefonso, a young filmmaker who created two films. Well, she had a short film, This Land Carries Us, and talks about her own family and their identity, their connection to the land surrounding them in San Ildefonso, Pueblo, Ohkay Owingeh. And then also Shireen did artist videos of each of the collaborators. That's also in the exhibition too, just talking about the artists' practice, ideas, images, inspirations as well. And she did a really great, amazing job. And we're having program on January 17th at the Sky Cinema here in Santa Fe, and where we'll be showing her film on the big screen as well too. So that'll be great. Martha Romero of Nambé Pueblo with drum pot to clay ceramic drum, I guess, pot vessel that she had created, with also the help of young man from Pojoaque Pueblo, and to help her string the drum and offer technical assistance. And Martha was one of those artists that had the question of like, why me? Why
Mhm.
why was I invited? And just seeing her work and seeing her use of animal imagery of the landscape, the micaceous clay, and then also that I think it was really. Oh, she had also participated in a artist residency at Ghost Ranch as
Mhm.
well too, and I think that was part of her. being in the landscape for about a week or so, living on site and gaining inspiration from the mountain, the other artists that were participating in the residency, but then also thinking about ideas of assimilation of growing up, maybe not as exposed to the landscape of growing up in Nambé and then moving back as an adult, and a lot of themes regarding assimilation, of separation, of detachment from the land, but also, understanding her place on the landscape as Nambé Pueblo woman, as a person from the Pueblo, and also being Tewa as well, and reaffirming, reasserting, and relearning her identity as well as a Tewa person. So really great pieces rather. And then yours truly. This was for the opening ceremonies for the exhibition, showing two of my clay tiles in the exhibition, also along with a ancestral micaceous vessel, by an artist that once was known, but then also served as the basis for the still life painting, the head with broken pot, with the skull affectionately named Little Johnny by O'Keeffe, that she had acquired it through, or not, I'm not too sure, as an acquired as in her own personal, but maybe just lent to her by the Candelario family that has the trading post located on San Francisco Street here in Santa Fe. And there's a caption. The label is written by Dr. Woody Aguilar of San Ildefonso Pueblo, talking about archaeology, skull ownership, who owns certain things regarding the issues related to archaeology, bones, cultural properties, all of that. So
maybe thinking about care of ancestors also, like what does it mean to care for your ancestors? And we don't know whose ancestor the skull
where this came.
We don't know where it came from, but we do know somebody's ancestor. So trying to maybe complicate sort of a casual, I mean, this is a very complex and heavy piece by O'Keeffe, but a depiction of an ancestor that doesn't necessarily connect back to that ancestral identity.
Right, exactly. And then the other piece is a Barbenheimer piece talking about nuclear colonization in New Mexico. Also, just pointing out the shirt that I'm wearing also has Tsiping on it as well too. This was created by the fashion designer Sage Mountain Flower of Ohkay Owingeh Pueblo. So also just wanting to point out that this Tsiping was very integral part of the exhibition, and also just my own pushing the mountain, of wanting to have that reaffirmation, that reclamation of the mountain as well in different forms.
So this is Michael Naminka with his large scale silk screen on canvas. And we included just a process image of how this silk screen was burnt. And so it's really amazing. It's a massive image of a photograph that he took during the Calf Canyon wildfire in New Mexico, the largest wildfire in the history of New Mexico. So for Michael, he's really talking a lot about climate change, environmental cataclysm, really, and creating this image of a cloud formation that you only see in like extreme cases of wildfire, volcanic eruption, or atomic detonation. And so he was definitely in dialogue with some of O'Keeffe's work, where she was also thinking through like the atomic age that she was living in. Let's see.
Arlo Naminka, Michael's brother, with the piece Sandhills. It's a bronze piece talking about the land formations and transition, landscape changing, And I know this piece can be stacked differently. We're looking at doing some programming in the near future where Arlo will come in and adjust the sculpture on the pedestal. And then the other piece that he had was Bashade, which relates to or is titled Deer Dance, and talking about the movement of the animals and also referencing the cardinal directions as well. And then my father, John Garcia, he had 4 paintings along with a bow and arrow quiver set in the exhibition. Some of his pieces talking about the top one talking about the keyhole doorways at Chaco, Mesa Verde, Buje, and that also references the doorway as you enter into the exhibition space. Portrait of O'Keeffe.
And O'Keeffe's store.
And
Sort of a
O'Keeffe,
play on O'Keeffe's
and
patio
also
door.
on her black door there located at the house in Abiquiu. And then his painting, the Portrait of O'Keeffe, and then the bottom is Santa Lima at Pepa is the traditional Tewa name for like the area that's located just south of Abiquiu of Abishu. And then the migration piece as well.
And these are just a few more installation shots. You can see Eliza Naranjo Morse working on creating her installation piece, Coming Home, in the gallery. It's a site-specific mural that she created from graphite, hand-gathered clay, and natural pigments directly on the surface of the wall and then on a platform across the floor, creating a path, sort of cueing us on the journey home into this landscape that's so familiar to Eliza, but also all of the artists and Tewa community members in general. And then I know we want to save some time for questions, so we have a few images here of the opening event, which was really, really beautiful. We had over 1,000 attendees, which was incredible. Many friends and neighbors and family members. And we were also able to have performances by the Northern Southern Dance Group from Ohkay Owingeh.
And then also had food from Monk Old Food Truck from Santa Clara Pueblo, and then also Mo and Company, also from Santa Clara Pueblo, that also provided food for one of our opening events. Plus, my son, Jacob Shihei, along with his band members, Jacob Shihei Trio, also performed during that opening night too. So it was really great to see so many people gathered and community, and it was pretty much like a block party, and everybody was saying like, why don't we have this every week? It was a really beautiful and amazing event, and I was really happy to see how it came out, and just the amount of people that were there was pretty mind-blowing. So again, it was really great to see.
And maybe I'll just put up this in the background. Jason mentioned this, but we do have an upcoming artist talk on Saturday, January 17th. So if you are local or if you're going to be in town, please join us. It's a free event at Sky Cinemas, formerly Violet Crown Cinemas, in the rail yard. So it should be really a wonderful afternoon of conversation with the artists themselves. I guess, Molly, do you want us to do questions now?
Yeah, let us jump to some questions. And before we do that, I just want to thank both of you so much in the space of less than an hour, being able to explain the incredible process behind this exhibition, the years of work and the conversations and the collaboration. So thank you for giving us a bit of some insight over how much work has been done. And thank you so much for taking the time to share that with us. We do have some questions filing in, and maybe what we can start with. Would you mind commenting a little bit about how language is represented in the exhibition, and what considerations were made with regard to Tewa language and pronunciations, and how you factored that into the design and the overall interpretation?
Yeah, I think some of the things regarding the Tewa language that we used. So Tewa does not have like a written finalized orthography. There's so many different variations that have come over the years of different bilingual programs and people spelling things phonetically. So we kind of went based on what the artist chose for their own Pueblo, for their own, however they felt they wanted to spell it. We weren't correcting them or anything. But then also in terms of like for myself and my father and Randy and Eliza and from Santa Clara, we kind of just had like an idea way of saying like this is how we're going to spell Kha'p'o Owingeh, and do you agree? Yes. Disagree? No. What do we need to change? But then also the majority of the artists in Tewa Nangeh also were part of an exhibition that is called Grounded in Clay, traveling exhibition. And we were part of those Pueblo curators. And we had some of these discussions prior regarding language. So we kind of used some of the spellings that we had already decided on, a year, 2 years ago. So that was kind of a nice base to kind of work from. And then kind of using our own added experiences. And then in the exhibition, we do have a statement regarding language saying that the collaborators are using their own personal, but we're not speaking for the entire Tewa Pueblo community and all 6 Pueblos. And then also in terms of the labels, there are labels where I don't know if you would say it's been common practice, but the museums use of language has been English labels and a Spanish translation. And so we, as the collaborators, talked about that. Do we want English translate or English, Spanish? Do we want a Tewa? Do we want other languages? Then we started talking about the language of the colonizer and which language of the colonizer do we choose? Do we choose the most current one that's occupying, Santa Fe, and now that's most most of us speak English, but uh, so there is a lot of questions about that and a lot of discussion as well too. So ultimately, we did end up just using English translation on the labels in the gallery space, but then we did have a Spanish translation, like brochure for visitors that, if they chose, they could go to the front and ask.
And I think really like ultimately the desire was that this exhibition is guided entirely by the voices of the artists themselves, right? And so the labels were written by the artists the way that they wrote them. The audio tour is all the artists' voices. And so we worked with a copy editor who was also Tewa. The process was very intentional about not having intervention really from the museum. Or from really other perspectives, adjusting like the artist's language. And so it's there. And if Tewa appears there, it was by the artist's choice. So yeah.
Thank you both for expanding on that. And a note on the audio tour. So the audio tour, if you visit the museum, that's a free resource that you can use with your own smartphone, or you can borrow one of ours. But that's also something you can listen to from home. So if you're not somewhere near the museum, you can listen to these recordings from the Tewa artist collaborators and listen to those, even if you're not able to see the exhibit in person. And I would definitely highly encourage you to do that because it's just a great way to engage with the artists. Just seeing some comments here. Overall, just folks saying, wow, so much work obviously went into this exhibition. Thanking you for your time. Let's scroll up a little bit. We have a question from Cheryl for Jason. And Cheryl shares that her family was separated from the Tewa Pueblos during the American Indian Removal Act. And she wonders what advice you might give to those who are wanting to respectfully find their way back, specifically through art and creative practice to the physical space.
I think, yeah, the Indian Removal Act and Indian Child Welfare Act, and there's a lot of colonization has a lot to do with removal and displacement and I think in some ways, what are some recommendations or my own recommendations, which may or may not reflect everybody? I would say probably find out documentation is probably the best way to start. Do you have documentation of what Pueblo or what tribe your family might be from? That's probably like the best way to start in terms of like census. Most tribes, in terms of colonization and recording, is very exact at times. That you can find people's names on census up to the late 1800s, and that's probably like the base to start from. So then there's a lot of issues with pretendians and people nowadays of claiming native identity. Uh, that's probably one place to start. Sometimes visiting tribe, visiting a pueblo, a nation, their enrollment offices to find out, that. But documentation is probably like one of the things to get in order. Then part of it is just also just understanding, respecting the land of being in the place. There's certain organizations within Santa Fe that, are central to Native communities. One I can think of is like Santa Fe Indigenous Center. There's also Okuu Owingeh land tax group, and, they're making different strides to help Native communities. So maybe that's one way of volunteering as well too. Um, I think supporting Native artists also as part of creative artistic practices is part of that, and being respectful of local tribes and not copying designs or not. It's a huge huge question. Very difficult to answer in just a quick 2-minute question, but that's one. Those are some steps, some areas to get um, started. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jason. And we have lots of questions coming in. And what I want to definitely share with today's audience is that throughout the run of this exhibition, which won't close until September of 2026, we have plenty of time. There will be more programs like this that invite longer, deeper conversations so that you can have a chance, both virtual and in person, to have some of these deeper dialogues that we may not have time to fully dive into today. But one question I think we can dive into really quickly, and I'll open it to both of you, is what's next? Do you have any projects or exhibitions or things that are coming up on your radar that we should be thinking about?
Even though that the exhibition is still running for the next 9 months, part of that is, people are like, "Oh, what's now? Are you done with it?" And it's like, no, we're just kind of getting the ball rolling. We've had several tours with different Native organizations. We still do have some public programming with the Art to Go truck that the O'Keeffe Museum has, working within Pueblo communities. We do have the talk on January 17th, so we invite everybody to that. We do plan on having a closing exhibition in the fall of 2026 with, again, maybe possibly more programming. For myself, I have a couple projects as far as like my own artistic practice. And then also one of those is creating more images for the exhibition for the variations on seeping. So, I know museum staff has been like, when are you bringing it in? Yeah, when's the next piece coming in? So, those are some of the things like that. But thank you all for coming out and seeing the exhibition and participating in dialogue. And I think one of the things we're also having is having artists within the gallery space as well to have any questions if you have and visit the exhibition. So stay tuned, to that as well on the website or Georgia O'Keeffe website.
Absolutely. That is so true. It does feel like, at least from the programming perspective, we're just getting started. So for those of you who are here, I definitely recommend subscribing to the O'Keeffe Museum's newsletter so you can stay posted about some of the other events that will be coming up that will have more opportunity for dialogue and conversation. And I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that there are some really wonderful questions in the Q&A that we're not going to be able to dive into, but please, reserve them for one of these future events. And in the meantime, since we are right at 10 o'clock, I like to close out these conversations with a comment from the Q&A, and I'll just share a small snippet of what Rebecca had to say, which was, "Thank you for this wonderful presentation. I can't wait to see the show." So she is a resident of New Mexico, and residents of New Mexico have opportunities to visit the O'Keeffe Museum free of charge, and she thanks that opportunity as well. So definitely come to one of these events, come visit us, and come take part in some of these programs that are definitely coming down the pike. And before we close out, finally, is there anything else, Bess and Jason, you'd like to add?
Talk about free admission.
Yeah, also
Yeah.
regarding free admission. So there is free admission to all Native Indigenous peoples. So, just come into the museum, let them know. So this is one of the things that we had wanted to have access to in terms of the museum, because prior to working on the exhibition, I had never actually been in the museum itself, just only the gift store because of admission costs and things like that. So that's one of the things that we made a priority for Indigenous Native peoples to come in and to see the exhibition as well too.
Yep.
And thank you to the museum for providing that for people as well too. So.
Yeah. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thanks
Great.
for
Yes.
listening. Thank you, Kunawaha. Have a great
Thank
day. Blessings of the new year as well too. So
Yes.
2026, yay.
Yes, we've made it. Thank you both so much. Thank you to everyone who's joined us today. We will send a follow-up email that also includes some information about programs and additional resources. So stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, have a terrific day and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Take
Bye.
care.